Thank you so much for joining Airport Ashley Chronicles. Today we have an amazing guest and actually one of the entities and companies that help with this entire Welcome to Africa series, Dr. Gina Paige, the co-founder of African Ancestry. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
If we can go into how you guys are different from other DNA companies.
Well, AfricanAncestry.com is different from other companies in many ways. First of all, we're the only Black-owned, Black woman-led, Black-founded, Black-funded company that focuses specifically on people of African descent. We are the pioneers of genetic ancestry tracing for Black people around the world. So that means we were before any of the companies that are in the marketplace today. Another way that we're different is that we focus on maternal ancestry and paternal ancestry. So we're not trying to determine all of the ancestries that make up who you are. We're looking at specific parts of your family tree using DNA that doesn't change over thousands of years. And so because we focus on what we call mitochondrial DNA, and the Y chromosome, we're able to find the ancestry of your mother's 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 mother going back 500 to 2,000 years, and your father's 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 father going back the same period of time. And what we provide is, when the result is African, a present-day African country, and ethnic group. So that's a very different identity answer than finding out that you're some percentage African.
Right.
You share ancestry with this group of people in this present-day country. And the reason we're able to do that, which also makes us different from the other companies, is that we have the largest collection of African DNA lineages in the industry.
Wow.
So while other companies may have 4,000 or 8,000, we have over 33,000 samples from Africans. So that allows us to be much more specific. And then the last way that I'll say we're different is that we're the only company that does not sell or share our customers' DNA.
That's big. I didn't even know prior to talking to you guys that other companies did that. Can you tell us the origin story on how African Ancestry was started and what inspired you guys to create it?
Sure. So my co-founder, Dr. Rick Kittles, is an African-American geneticist, and he specializes in the genetics of people of African descent. And he had a burning desire to know where specifically in Africa he comes from. Fast forward throughout his science training, his degree, all of his degrees, his PhD, he was doing some ancestry research on Finnish people and recognized that if he was able to do it on Finnish people who aren't as genetically diverse as Black people and as people from Africa, that he should be able to do it for himself. And so he compiled a database of African lineages to do the research. And then in the 90s, I'm sure you're aware of the New York African Burial Ground Project. They were excavating the land to build a federal building, and they came upon a cemetery. They had to halt the excavation, the construction. And there was a team of researchers from Howard, Dr. Kittles was at Howard at the time, who were brought in to help identify the people in this cemetery, which was of enslaved Africans. And so when the community found out that Dr. Kittles was able to place those people in countries and ethnic groups, he was inundated with requests to do it for them. But he's a researcher. He wasn't in business. That's not his skill and talent. And so we were introduced by a colleague who knew that I had experience with launching new product lines and managing large product lines. And so we connected, we partnered, and I commercialized his research. So now anyone who wants to know the ancestry of a maternal ancestor or a paternal ancestor can get the answer.
That's awesome. Now, I know you go to Africa a lot. And when you continue to go, because you guys are more than just a DNA company, it seems like you're really passionate about the space, about the diasporas. Can you tell us a little bit about what you guys currently do and why you're in Africa so much?
Well, my first trip to Africa goes back to my junior year in college. So that's many years ago. I visited Dakar, Senegal as part of a sister cities exchange between Washington, D.C. and Dakar, Senegal. That was my introduction to Africa. I lived there for 3 months, and it really was life-changing experience. I had to learn how to live in another country on my own without family or friends as support network. I had to speak French. It was either French or Wolof, and I didn't know Wolof, so my French got very, very good. And I developed some lifelong friendships as a result of that experience and learned a lot about what we're taught about Africa versus what life was like in Dakar, Senegal, West Africa. In 2019, prior to the pandemic, we launched African Ancestry Family Reunions. Our culturally immersive birthright journeys home, specially curated for people who have traced their ancestry to a specific country. And so our first trip was to Sierra Leone, and we took about 12 people whose ancestry we traced to the Mende people or the Temini people or the Limba people, and did a 2-week experience there, visited the different regions, the provinces, engaged with the Mende people and with the Temini people and so on. And then they were given citizenship by the president of Sierra Leone. And that continued, that citizenship continued for several years. We also traveled to Cameroon, we traveled to Nigeria, Ghana, and Senegal. So we are excited about taking people to the next level. You know, you find out where you're from. And of course, not everyone can travel. Not everybody wants to travel. But if you do want to and can, then you can go have this immersive experience on the continent.
Are you guys still doing the family reunions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When are they? And how can people get information on those?
So they are on our site, AfricanAncestry.com, under travel. Our next one is in March to Cameroon.
Okay. How far in advance do people have to register, sign up to go?
I think we closed the trip maybe like 6 weeks in advance.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but.
Okay. So it's based on basically the people's results when they come. So like individuals who are from Cameroon, you guys will do like an exploration there, right?
Exactly. Benin, my understanding is that they are offering citizenship to any descendant, any African descendant. I think you just have to prove that you have African ancestry.
Yeah, from West Africa. And you have to prove that you were part of this transatlantic slave trade, which is most Black people in America. Going on that too, there's a lot of people who are mixed race in America. So when you were saying that it's your mother's mother's mother or whatnot, can you kind of break down what the difference is? Like if you do have multicultural backgrounds in your family, how that works for the tracking?
So I'll explain it in the form of an art lesson. So we each inherit 50% of our DNA from our mother and 50% from our father. So if your mother's yellow and your father's blue, then you're going to be green, right? So we're all green. Everyone watching, we're all green. We all inherit a little bit of DNA from our mother that never mixes. It stays yellow. It never turns green. And that's mitochondrial DNA. It's maternally inherited, meaning it's passed from mother to child, mother to child, mother to child. So we take your mitochondrial DNA, a portion of it, and then we look for matching portions elsewhere in the world. When we find matches in Africa, then we're able to say you share ancestry with these people living in this place. If you know that your maternal ancestry is not African, then it would not make sense to trace your maternal ancestry with African ancestry.
Right. Correct.
You already know it's not going to be African.
Right.
But we also are mixed people. Inherent in being African American is a mixture. The average Black person is 75% African, 25% European, Black American. And so we just don't always know where in the family tree that mixture occurred. Historically, it's been through white men. White men were fathering brown babies.
Correct.
So when an person of African descent takes our test, 92 out of 100 of them will get an African result. 8 will not.
Okay.
6 of them is going to be European, not African.
Okay. So when that happens, when those results come back, how do you guys handle that? It just says inconclusive?
No, it is very conclusive. It's just not African. We say you share ancestry with people living in Europe. Or
I got it.
the indigenous American population, or your results are Middle Eastern or they're Asian. So we tell you, we are an ancestry testing company.
Mm-hmm.
So we tell you whatever we find. It's just that our focus is on reconnecting Black people to Africa. So the majority of the time, those maternal results will come back African. But it's not like that on the father side. So if we go back to our art lesson where we're all green, combination of yellow from our mother, blue from our fathers, those who are assigned male or intersex at birth, they also get a little bit of DNA from their father that never mixes. It stays blue, and that's the Y chromosome.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're male or intersex, you have the same Y chromosome as your father, his father, and so on, and it never changes. So when 100 men or those who are intersex take our test, 65 will get an African result. Their Y chromosome will be African, and 35 of them, their Y chromosome will be European. And that's because the British, the Portuguese, the Spanish, the Dutch, they were all actively engaged in, like I said, fathering brown babies.
Absolutely.
Now, doesn't mean you're not Black. Doesn't mean you don't have any African ancestry. It means on that one branch of your tree, the lineage goes back to a European person. And we all have it. We just don't know. And it doesn't matter whether you're our complexion, you and me, or if you are Idris Elba's complexion.
Right.
Skin color does not determine what your ancestry is going back 500 to 2,000.
That's so true. And now, on that vein, what shifts have you observed in how people see themselves once they receive their results?
It's a beautiful thing, actually, to be in the presence of someone who has taken an African ancestry test and knows now that they share ancestry with the Mandinka people in Senegal, or the Mbundu people in Angola, or the Bamileke people in Cameroon. Like, I don't even know how to describe it, really. So I'll tell you what people have said.
Okay.
So one time we got a note from a wife who, she happened to be a white woman, whose husband happens to be a Black man.
Okay.
He had gotten the test and got this, I don't remember what the result was, but she wrote us and she said, my husband stands taller. He walks prouder. He feels so much better about who he is because of this connection. I have seen people who immediately can relate to some of the characteristics or some of the practices of the ethnic group that they share ancestry with, and they can chart it throughout their family history. They didn't know where it came from. I mean, it can be something as simple as rice, right?
Okay. Yeah.
If you come from South Carolina, there's a good chance that rice was a staple of your diet. Now,
Correct.
That comes from rice plantations, of course, being a part of, or the driver of the economy in South Carolina. But those enslaved Africans who worked those plantations were in large part from Sierra Leone, because Sierra Leoneans were expert farmers. So the plantation owners wanted a labor force that they didn't have to train, that they knew could work efficiently to deliver their product, because slavery is a business. And so we see so many things, but it's a sense of pride. It's a sense of place. It's a sense of belonging. And it fills a void that we often don't even know exists until it gets filled.
Yes. I've seen a number of your interviews too. And I just love the work that you're doing in this space. I think that you're such a pioneer and it's so necessary. So just, I want to give you some flowers and kudos to you in that regard. There's a large awareness right now of traveling to Africa and or moving to Africa, the expat, the global mobility space. Where do you think that's coming from? Because obviously Africa has always been here. And I don't know if you've seen the media recently for iSpeed show. Yeah, So it's like, again, the young viral kid, right, who's going out there. However, it's just like this whole explosion of excitement. It's on TMZ, it's everywhere. People go to Africa all the time, you being one of them. So, I mean, what do you think that is?
I think that the heightened awareness of Africa was driven by the year of the return, on a year of the return. So in 2019, there was a acknowledgement of the 400th year since the first enslaved Africans arrived at Jamestown, Virginia. Ghana took the reins and ran with it. And so you got a lot of celebrities, a lot of influencers to come to Ghana. They got people from the United States, the African American community and the diaspora to put trips together to come in large numbers. The NAACP took 250 people in August, large groups. There was a lot of social media awareness around Ghana. And that's what did it. In my opinion, that's what kind of flicked the switch. And then once people got there, they realized that I don't have to go to Paris. I don't have to go to Dubai. I can go to Accra, Ghana. I can hang out at the Sky Bar. I can go to Afrochella when it was called Afrochella. I can also have a cultural experience. Everyone looks like me. Everyone in power looks like me. I'm safe here. Like, there are all these other things that happened around just physically being there that made people feel comfortable and feel good. Besides, in addition to the hype. I mean, it just part of the hype. And since 2019, they now have a Beyond the Return campaign, which has kept the interest levels high and the focus on Ghana high. They offer citizenship to large numbers of people now, not based on whether, it's not based on where your DNA or anything like that. So I think that's what flicked the switch. And I'm glad that it has, because it is nothing new. It is nothing new. But unfortunately, Ashley, we are victims of groupthink, of conditioned thinking, of negative stereotypes, and of miseducation and lack of education. And so all of those things laid a foundation that made us think, why do I want to go there? Do they have electricity? Is everyone starving? Like, these are real things that grown people ask.
That's insane.
Oh, but it's just because, look, the whole purpose of slavery was to disconnect us. And they did a good job. That disconnection they fueled, the system has fueled the disconnection for hundreds of years. So I'm very happy that people have decided to travel to Africa, that they're considering relocating to Africa, although I think that needs to be done with a lot of thought.
Why do you say that?
Well, because while there are major cities, it's not the U.S. You're not going to, and we have our flaws here. There are people who don't have clean water, people who don't have electricity all the time. There are people who don't have access to the internet and all of that. But for the most part, you're going to have all those things where you live right now in the United States. And when you travel to another country, particularly one that is not as developed as what you're accustomed to, there are some adjustments that you have to make. And there's some things you have to consider before deciding to go there. Can you speak the language? Do you understand the culture? How are you going to earn a living? Some of the basic things. It's not all glorified. People who have gone, we've seen through social media, YouTube and the like, that people who have gone without much planning and preparation and understanding turn around and come right back home.
So can we go back into your family reunions that you guys have? You plan them, you set them up. Can you go in a little bit into detail about how logistically those trips are? So if people want to go, that might be a good option for them to start going on one of your trips.
Yeah, so we make sure that we have a wide range of experiences. So we travel to different regions within the country. We make sure that the people who travel with us are able to interact with people from their ethnic group as much as possible. For example, when we travel to Cameroon, there are people whose ancestries we find among the Massa people, the Mafa people, the Kotoko people, but they're in the far north, and it's not safe to travel to the far north of Cameroon right now. So we try and make sure that we can have some experiences for them in the major cities where you can also find those people. And we do a lot of cultural heritage activities, visiting the door of return or the point of no return. Making sure that we indulge in the foods. There's a lot of shopping that happens because honestly, that's what people want to do. when they're travel, but we always give back in service in some way. So it's a comprehensive experience and then there's also time for reflection. With every trip, there is a beach or a waterfront or someplace where we are able to spend a day or two and really reflect on the fact that we are there, the fact that we came back and that we've closed that circle for ancestors who never thought that it was possible.
Yeah. So I know this based off of conversations that we've had offline, but I kind of want people to understand, and even in supporting African Ancestry, it's not just a business. Yeah, you guys don't sell people's DNA, things like that, but it's truly like a movement. And if people want to support a company, a mission, a goal, I think this is a great place to start. It's not just about trying to show people their history, their ancestry, their DNA. You guys go a little bit deeper. Can you elaborate on your purpose, your mission, and everything that you do behind the scenes that a lot of people might not know about, that they might not see in other interviews, because it's more than just the test and the kit?
Okay. Yeah. So when we are in the identity business, really that's the business we're in, because our mission is to help Black people transform the way we view ourselves and the way we view Africa. And our starting point for that is DNA. We do it through DNA, we do it through education, and we do it through travel. People support African Ancestry because we're Black owned, and we love that because in addition to being Black owned, our entire staff is Black. The majority of our vendors and suppliers are Black owned business. So we practice Kwanzaa, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa every day of the year. But more importantly, we're the only company that can give you the present day African country and ethnic group that you come from. So yes, it's great that you're supporting us because we're Black owned, but you should be supporting us because we're giving you information that you can't get anywhere else. We're not going to tell you that you're 40% this and 20% that and 5% this and 3% that, because when you think about who you are, you already know that you're from West Africa, or you should, because history has told us that. That's not the question that people want to know, that they want the answer to. They want to know, who are the people? What are the practices, the beliefs, the values, the traditions that have informed who I am, that provide that rooted foundation for living? And psychologists tell us, Ashley, that knowing where you're from is a critical component of knowing who you are.
Absolutely.
You're the only group of people that doesn't know the answer to that question. Africa has 54 countries, or 55 if you want to, depending on who you talk to. Thousands of languages and thousands of traditions and thousands of cultural practices. And you deserve to know which ones are yours. And that's what we do. And so that's why we participate and network with people and organizations in other countries, so that we can bring as much access to what it means to be African for you and you as possible. Yeah, we don't do this because it's to make money. Because we don't keep the DNA, we're not making money like everybody else.
Right.
Because we have a specific database, and we're not just telling you based on comparing you to 4,000 or 5,000 people, here are all the places you're from in Africa. In my opinion, that's disrespectful. It's just disrespectful. You want your DNA to be compared to as many people as possible. And if you're looking for an African ancestor or answer, having your DNA compared to 75,000 Europeans isn't helpful. Now, if you want to know, find a cousin, find a 5th or 6th cousin, all of that, then we're not the test for that.
Yeah.
But if you want to know something about your Africanness and your family's Africanness, then we're the place to do that.
That's right. Because you guys have the largest African database of DNA, how does that matter for accuracy? Because like you said, other testing places might be able to tell you a region, but as far as the accuracy, you guys could say you're part of this tribe, or you're a bit here or there. Can people find out specifically, this is where my ancestors are? Or, like you said, you can't find a cousin. Correct.
The name and address.
No, not the name and address, but to actually locate some of their ancestors or lineage.
Yeah. So the way this whole industry works, Ashley, is it's a matching process.
Mm-hmm.
Each company takes some portion of your DNA and then looks for other people who have that same portion.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like the baseline. I'm not a scientist. I'm giving it to you guys, the layman's term. And so if you are looking for Native American connections, you're going to want your DNA to be compared to as much Native American DNA as possible, right? Because you want the greatest chance of finding a match.
Absolutely.
If you're looking for Scandinavian ancestry, then you want your DNA to be compared to as many Scandinavian people as possible. Well, the same thing is true if you're looking for African ancestry. And again, not just that you're African, because we already know that, but if you want that level of ethnic group specificity in a present day delineation, then you need a database that has the most African samples. Mm-hmm. So our database has 33,000 African samples from 35 countries and about 400 ethnic groups. We have all of West and Central Africa included by country. We're not manufacturing regions. We're not saying Benin and Togo and Ghana all together. No.
That's right.
We've got each individual West African country, plus some other countries as well.
Okay.
And then our closest competitor had 4,000 African samples from maybe like 12 countries.
Mm-hmm. And
then they added 4,000 Nigerian samples. So now they have 8,000 samples, but more than half of the database is from Nigeria.
That's why everyone's Nigerian when you take those tests. Everybody's Nigerian.
Nigeria. And, we do come from different parts of Africa. I'm not saying we only come from one part, but come on, y'all, really?
Right.
Don't require algebra. That's basic. That's just basic math. And then on top of that, okay, so if I'm 40% Nigerian or whatever, I don't know. People just pick the biggest percentage and say that's what they are.
Right.
Which part of your family is from Nigeria? Is it your mother's side? Is it your father's side? Is it your mother's side or her father's side? Like, we have complexity. We have depth. Mm-hmm. And we will not, at African Ancestry, you will not be relegated to a percentage of a region.
Can we walk through the process? So you order your kit. I know when I was talking to you guys before, you say you have to register it online first and foremost before you take your test, correct?
So we have 2 kits.
Mm-hmm.
One anybody can use that traces maternal ancestry. The other, again, you have to have a Y chromosome to use that one.
So male.
And so the kits contain swabs that are like Q-tips.
Mm-hmm.
Rub the inside of your cheek gently to collect the cheek cells. And then you send those swabs to our lab in confidential packaging. So when you send it to the lab, they don't know your name. They don't know your address. They just know that your barcode number, blah, 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 blah. So that's how we maintain confidentiality. Also, the people who handle your genetic information have no idea who you are.
Mm-hmm.
The lab then unlocks the code of your DNA, so to speak. My business partner hates when I say that, but that's the easiest way for me to understand it. They're unlocking your unique code, and then they send that data to our science team, who then does the analysis. Now, in order for us to have the lab process your DNA, we need your consent. And consent is given when you go through the registration and activation process.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we won't do anything to anyone's swabs unless we get that registration and activation complete. The other thing that is important is in that process, you are reminded that there is no guarantee that we're going to find African ancestry.
Right.
We can't make your DNA African.
Right.
And what we say is you share maternal genetic ancestry with people living in Europe today.
Mm-hmm.
And then we say, just like I said to you earlier, this does not mean that you don't have any African ancestry.
Correct.
This does not mean that you're not Black.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that you're white.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that one of your 1,000 ancestors is European. So there's a reminder of that when you register as well, because it has such a drastic effect on people when they don't get an African answer, which I understand and respect. You can't, It's not something we've done intentionally, and we didn't
Right.
make a mistake.
Well, and that's why just having transparency like you guys have done and continue to do is important. You're not making any false claim. People need to kind of just take heed at that.
And
But
history.
sorry?
And learn history.
Absolutely.
But so then once you've submitted your swabs, you are updated online, your account and your dashboard, you can see the status of your swabs. And then when your results are ready, you're notified and you view your results online, your letter. We have a certificate. We have a digital guide to African history and culture. We have an online community on Facebook where people are connecting. And so that's the testing process.
What can we expect coming up for African Ancestry this year? I know you talked about going to Cameroon in March.
Yeah, so in 2026, we're looking forward to continuing our African Ancestry family reunions. And we're looking forward to embracing and inviting more people into the African Ancestry family. We have some new courses that we're going to be launching this year, some that help people understand their results and what to do next, prepare them for what to do next with their results, some about the different countries, cooking. We got some courses coming up. And then we continue to launch new merch throughout the year as well. I'm hopeful that in 2027, we'll be adding 1 or 2 more countries to our African Ancestry family reunion. So that's what we're preparing for now.
So one of the differentiations that we talk about from other companies with African Ancestry, obviously we touched on the fact that you guys don't sell the DNA, you guys have silos, and you're really intentional on telling people where they're from if you can. When I've talked to people about working with you guys on this series and they were looking at other options, they said, oh, that's really cool. I want to deal with someone that focuses strictly on African DNA, but why is it so expensive compared to the other DNA tests out in the market? So do you want to touch on that? Obviously, with you guys not selling DNA, that's a huge margin loss. So I can understand that. But
well, you touched on one of the major ones is that we don't monetize your DNA.
Mm-hmm.
So other companies can charge $99, $49, give it away for free because the value of your DNA will continue to earn money for them into perpetuity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our DNA is our wealth.
Right.
It's the most valuable part of who we are, argue.
Mm-hmm.
And so we respect that and don't monetize it. So you pay us once and then we destroy your DNA and we never make any more money off of your DNA. But more importantly than that, we're giving you a very targeted and specific answer. They're 2 totally different types of tests. So if you just want to know that you are 75% African, I will tell all of you all that for free. You don't have to pay anybody to get that information, but understanding the nuances of the foundation of who you are has a value. And so this test is for people who value the information. It's really just that simple as far as I'm concerned. There are plenty of things that people spend, and I'm not in your pocket. Like, I respect however people want to spend their money. I get it. But there are plenty of things that people spend $300 on.
Absolutely.
Concert tickets.
Right. Shoes, hair, clothes. I can go on.
Nails.
Yeah, I can go on.
So, and that's fine. You value those things.
Right.
And how they affect you. They are worth that to you.
Yes.
So if knowing the people and the place in Africa that is fundamental to your identity, having the information that will then prepare you for the storms that come, because now you've got some roots. When people try to tell you what you can and cannot do, you know who you come from. If that's worth it to you, then you will pay for it. And if it's not, that's cool. You go to another company that's going to tell you that you're some percentage African and is going to continue to benefit financially from your DNA. We all have choices.
Yeah. I'm going to touch a little bit on that because you keep on saying where you come from, knowing where you come from. And what motivated me and really has created a passion in me to figure out my personal ancestry is I had a dream when I was 19 and I was in Louisiana and I was going to this concert. And long story short, I was in this basement of this house that the concert was at, and it was a Black History Museum. So it had Benjamin Banneker, Madam T.J. Walker, Frederick Douglass, all in this basement of this house, right? I was trying to find a bathroom. And so this lady who worked at the house said, where are you going? And I was like, oh, I was just trying to find the bathroom, but I'm literally wandering around this house. Then this lady who was very demure and petite, and you know how with cataracts, how your eyes turn gray or like blue? She came down these stairs and she was just looking at me. She was like around her 80s, 90s or something. And then she said, babe, come upstairs. I want you to meet your family. And I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? I'm just thinking I'm going to a concert. And then she says, you're not going to become who you're supposed to be until you know where you come from. And I woke up. I talked to my great uncle who's no longer here, and he told him about the house, told him about the lady. And he was like, that's Aunt Flo. I was like, wait, what? He was like, yeah, that's Aunt Flo. She never had any kids. That was her house. And so for an ancestor to come visit me, I'm like, this is real, right? And for her, for those to be like the lasting words, you're not going to be who you're supposed to be unless you know where you come from. So what do you think about that? Because I mean, it's kind of what you've been saying.
I agree with Aunt Flo 1,000%. You know, we lost so much. When our ancestors were stolen from the continent, they lost their names, they lost their languages, they lost the freedom to honor their ancestors. Families were continually sold apart, viciously torn apart. And when you don't have any of those things, you don't know who you are.
Right.
And we are so resilient that we have created our own identities. We have created a whole culture, multifaceted culture, but we still don't have that missing piece. And I've just seen it time and time again. When you get the missing piece, it makes you feel whole. It makes you feel strong. It makes you feel like I said this already, like you belong. And it gives a context for your life.
Yes.
And when you have those things, we don't know because we don't have it. But when you have those things, then you can be bold and back it up.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, put your chest into it because you know you got the facts. You have the facts.
Yeah.
So it's so hard to explain. It really is hard to explain. It's like telling somebody, just trust me, you're gonna feel different. And who's gonna believe that? Okay, I'm gonna trust you. But you really do feel different.
I was talking to a great cousin of mine, and she was saying, we had this conversation, and it's basically like being an adopted child and finding your roots, finding, your actual biological family. So, because a lot of us know our biological parents or grandparents out here, some don't. However, we still don't know where exactly we come from. And then like that going home aspect. So obviously when you get your DNA, then you can make it to Africa. I think that's like a whole full circle moment. Do you feel something when you got off, or when you see other people, when you have the family reunion, when they get off of Africa? I mean, for your experience, after the test, you guys bring these people there. What are some of those just personal moments that you experienced, that you've seen people like where, I don't want to say they exhale, but I'm sure that there's something like a visceral,
It's absolutely visceral. So my favorite experience was in 2010. We went to Cameroon with an organization called the Arc Jammers, which is an international group of musicians and music lovers, mostly Cameroonians at that time. And so they put together a trip where all you had to do was pay for your airfare.
Okay. Wow.
So 54 people showed up at Dulles Airport.
Wow.
As African Americans who had taken an African ancestry test.
Okay.
And knew that their roots were in Cameroon, the Bamaleke, the Tikar, Rwanda, all of them. We flew to Cameroon. We had a layover. And then on the second leg, when they got off the plane, they were calling themselves Cameroonian American.
That's right. That's what I'm talking about.
Like, 13 hours or something. They got off the plane and they're like, we are home. We are Cameroonian Americans. There's a whole welcome and they were all into it. 3 days in the country. And then they were Camericans.
Okay.
And then the media was following us because, 54 Black folks coming to Cameroon is a big deal.
Absolutely.
And they were calling us Camericans. And then when we got back, the embassy started calling them, my ancestry is not Cameroonian.
Okay, I asked you. I'm like, so okay.
birthday. So now, at least in the DC area, American is like a recognized term among the
Based off of that trip.
They transform their identity, and we know that identity is a constantly evolving narrative of self. You get to be whoever you want to be, whenever you want to be. I have a friend, a dear, dear, dear friend in Los Angeles, where you are. So his name is Damon, and Damon came on our second African Ancestry family reunion to Sierra Leone.
Okay.
And Damon grew up in South Central, and he's Mende. His ancestry is Mende. And now he is like Mende everything. He's got the sign. I don't know, he does his fingers, however, does his fingers for the Mende.
Right. Oh my
Every
God.
time he meets somebody, he's like, where are you from? He doesn't settle for Africa as an answer. And whenever he meets someone who's Sierra Leonean, it's like this instant love fest.
Yeah.
He has embraced this Mende ancestry and shares it with everybody. You know, it really helps to break down barriers, and it helps to dispel stereotypes too.
We didn't talk about it.
We don't learn, we learn very little positive about Africa. Sure. They don't learn anything positive about us as Black folks. So there's all this misinformation that keeps us separated. But when I get into a car and I ask the driver, I don't recognize your name. What country are you from? Or where are you from? And they say Africa. And I say, Africa's got a lot of countries. Which country in Africa?
Right.
Don't let him be Cameroonian. I have new Cameroonian friends now from Uber drivers, because I'm like, oh, and then I start speaking in French and say, I've been to Cameroon. And they're like, just the fact that you know the country is enough to be an icebreaker. Then if you can name cities in the country, then it's even more of an icebreaker. And then you can talk about the food, or, you know what I mean? So even on a very basic human level here at home, it allows us to interact in an informative and educated way with people who we wouldn't necessarily think we had anything in common with.
So on that vein, do you think like just having these conversations continues to help, you know, with the educational gaps that are there, and then traveling, or like what are other things that people can do outside of just having, like, you know, being inquisitive or seeing stuff online, or what do you think can really change that diaspora, like when it comes down to exposure and breaking those stereotypes?
I think it can be having conversations. I think you can go to a restaurant, try new food.
Yeah.
When the server comes over, ask them, what is this about?
Yes.
What do you recommend? But, you know, so I think something as simple as going to a restaurant, if you live in a city where there are African restaurants. And I don't think the country matters. Talk to anybody from any African country. It's just conversation. It's as simple as conversation, Ashley, really. But you can, if you're not, you know, so if you're traveling, taking a test, going to events, again, depending on what kind of city you live in. I live in Washington, D.C., so, you know,
very diverse. Yeah.
It's not really fair for me to say it based on D.C., but there are African communities all across the United States.
Yep. I think what you're saying, too, is just being intentional, right? And there's a lot of people who unfortunately get moved by way of social media and what's like a trend or a fad, but really tapping into your roots, getting to know who you are, the why, the how, the when, like, you know, really having the substance behind it, I think is where it's like the beauty and the authenticity.
Read a book.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I went to this restaurant, and a friend of mine was Nigerian. So he was surprised that I was literally just eating with my hands and called it pounding yam and not fufu like that. I'm like, oh, was there a mala? You know, but understanding that. And like, it goes back to what you were just saying, being intentional, not just for the sensationalism of it, but like really understanding, wanting to know not just where you're from, but the culture behind it. Like you said, whether it's the languages or the food or how people dress or the traditions and even how you address each other. I mean, there's different caveats and nuances within each culture. So I think just really being intentional is super important.
Well said.
Having these type of conversations. But I look forward to coming to one of your trips. I want to go to your family reunion.
Yeah.
And let me know for next year.
You're welcome. You just have to be part of the African Ancestry family. You don't have to be from that country, but you do have to be part of the family.
I am part of the family, I thought. But Thank you so much for kicking off the Welcome to Africa series with Airport Ashley Chronicles, Dr. Paige. Again, I love everything that you guys are doing. I hope we can just continue to have these conversations and educate people and try to bring people home and give people some true validity of their identity, because it's a coming home. Like Aunt Flo said, you're not going to become who you're supposed to be until you know where you come from. So you have any closing remarks that you want to say?
I wish you the best for the series. I can't wait to see what your experience is like when you find your results and where you ultimately travel to as part of the series. And I appreciate that you are spreading the word, not just about African ancestry, but about the importance of us as Black people, as people of African descent, knowing where we're from and helping. Your work is helping to break down some of the stereotypes and right the miseducation. So thank you.
Amen. Thank you so much. And then if you want to get any more information on African Ancestry, the information will be right there on the screen, but it's www.africanancestry.com. And it's the same on social media. Their social media page is amazing. It's so much great information, and not just even about DNA, but it's about Black culture. So make sure to follow them on both, and you too can join the community. Thank you so much. Until next time, have a blessed day, and welcome to Africa.